Have you ever stopped to wonder how professional theater actually got its start in America? Well, it wasn't in New York or Boston, that's for sure. It's a story that starts with desperation, a super risky journey across the ocean, and, believe it or not, some seriously clever marketing. Today, we're going to dive into the true story of the Hallam Company. It's a tale so wild it's now a musical, and we're using its script as our guide.
And check this out. This is the poster for that musical. It really captures the whole epic vibe of the journey. The story kicks off way back in 1752, more than 270 years ago, with a ship called the Charming Sally and a small, scrappy group of actors who were about to change American culture forever. Okay, let's get into it.
So, our story begins in London around 1751. But don't picture some grand adventure born out of pure ambition. No, this story starts, like so many great stories do, from a place of just sheer desperation.
So on one side, you have the situation in London, and it's pretty bleak. William Hallam's theater was failing big time. It was on the edge of bankruptcy, completely overshadowed by the superstars of the day, like the legendary actor David Garrick. But on the other side, the American colonies, a huge, totally untapped market. For William and his brother Louis, who was an actor, this wasn't just some clever idea. It was their last shot.
And this line from the musical really just says it all, doesn't it? I mean, can you imagine the feeling? That mix of sheer terror and wild excitement? They decided to pack up absolutely everything. Sets, costumes, props, their families, the whole shebang, and sail across the Atlantic. It was a completely audacious gamble.
So the plan is in motion, but getting there was going to be half the battle. And in this case, it was also going to be half the rehearsal. The journey itself, totally unprecedented.
And listen, this was not some casual trip. The amount of money they invested just shows you how high the stakes were. The Hallams paid the ship's captain £403. That was an enormous amount of money back then for the exclusive use of his ship, the Charming Sally. They were literally betting everything they had. And this timeline just gives you a sense of what a massive undertaking this was. They took off from London in early May 1752, and for the next 6 weeks, the Atlantic Ocean literally became their stage. They rehearsed constantly on the ship's quarterdeck whenever the weather was good enough, so they could hit the ground running. They finally arrived in Yorktown, Virginia on June 2nd.
And they weren't just practicing some simple one-act play. I mean, look at this list. It's ambitious even by today's standards. We're talking multiple Shakespearean tragedies like Hamlet and Othello, popular comedies, even operas, over 20 full productions in total. They had to be ready for anything and everything.
So the company finally arrives. They're probably exhausted, but they are prepared. Now comes the next challenge. Build a theater from scratch and convince a colonial audience that this weird new art form was worth their time and their money.
And here it is. This is the moment, the official birth of professional theater in America. On September 15th, 1752, in a theater they had just fixed up in Williamsburg, Virginia, the Hallam Company opened with their production of The Merchant of Venice. Now, to introduce themselves, they had this brilliant prologue. These are the actual opening lines, spoken by one of the actors on that very first night. They were basically saying, hey, we've brought the best of British culture right to your doorstep. This thing you've heard about called theater, well, it's here now for you. But a successful opening night didn't guarantee them a future. Not at all. The company quickly found out that a lot of colonists saw theater not as high art, but as something sinful, a corrupting influence. Survival was going to take more than talent. It was going to take some real ingenuity. Yeah, as they started to tour, they hit a brick wall. In cities with really strong religious roots, places like Charleston and Newport, public performances were often straight up illegal. Their entire dream was at risk of getting shut down before it even really got started. So how did they get around these laws? Well, with one of the cleverest marketing pivots in history. They rebranded their plays. All of a sudden, Shakespeare wasn't a scandalous performance anymore. Nope, it was a series of moral dialogues. Hamlet wasn't just entertainment, it was a lesson in ethics. It was genius. They weren't selling theater, they were selling respectable, educational culture. So with this really clever strategy, the company managed to survive and tour the colonies. But just as they were finally finding their footing, a tragedy struck that threatened to end the whole thing for good. After a really tough run in Charleston, Lewis Hallam moved the company to Jamaica, hoping for a better reception. But while they were there, he got sick and died in 1756. Just like that, the company's leader, their manager, the driving force behind the whole project, was gone, and they were stranded thousands of miles from home.
And that really became the central question for everyone left in the troupe. With Lewis gone, how could they possibly keep going?
Well, the answer came from Lewis's widow, the formidable Mrs. Hallam. She took her late husband's advice and sought out another actor-manager named David Douglas. They combined their two troupes, and in doing that, they created something totally new, something more resilient, the Old American Company.
So in the end, the Hallam Company didn't just survive the death of its leader, it was reborn. It evolved, becoming the direct ancestor of every single professional stage in America today. From a desperate gamble in London to a rehearsal space on a ship in the middle of the ocean, this tiny group laid the foundation for an entire art form. It makes you wonder, doesn't it, how many other great American institutions began not with some grand vision but with a simple, desperate need to survive?